Did you know that a tiny coin sitting in your drawer could be worth more than a brand new luxury car? Some of these old Australian 50-cent and 1 penny coins are now fetching hundreds of thousands of dollars, yes, six figures for just a single coin. And here's the kicker, many of them were once considered worthless pocket change. What makes them so special? Rare minting errors, historic value, and ultra-low surviving numbers. These are the coins that collectors dream about, and you might just have one without even knowing it. Stick around as we count down the top 10 most valuable Australian 50-cent and 1 penny coins ever discovered. You won't believe number 1. And hey, before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss a chance to uncover a hidden fortune.
Coin that might look like nothing special at first glance. A 1995 Australian 50-cent piece, well worn, circulated, and likely passed through hundreds of hands over the years. But don't be fooled by appearances, because this little coin hides a secret that could make your jaw drop. Now, 1995 wasn't a particularly rare year for Australian 50-cent coins. Over 22 million of them were minted. So you might be thinking, how can that possibly be worth anything? But here's the twist. Not all 1995 coins were created equal. Collectors have discovered a rare die variation in a small number of these coins, specifically a die clash error that occurred during the minting process. In some examples, you'll see ghost-like impressions where parts of the Queen's profile appear faintly doubled, or where parts of the coat of arms are misaligned or lightly offset. These aren't damage marks, they're errors made by the mint itself. And that's exactly what drives collectors wild. Imagine a penny was discovered to have been struck on a foreign copper-nickel blank, possibly intended for use in South America or Asia, making it a surprised one-of-a-kind hybrid worth tens of thousands of dollars. And then there are the double strikes and rotated dies, coins that were struck twice by the press, leaving ghost-like images of Lincoln's face or overlapping dates. These bizarre-looking errors, even when circulated and worn, have sold for $10,000 to $20,000, depending on the severity and clarity of the mistake. But here's the kicker. A 1965 Lincoln penny was recently discovered to have been struck with a 1964 die, meaning the design elements were slightly mismatched for the year. That coin, dark, scratched, and circulated, was authenticated and valued at over $87,000. Simply because it shouldn't exist. So what should you look for? First, weigh it. A normal 1965 penny should weigh 3.11 grams. Finally, we arrive at a year that seems safe, ordinary, even boring, 1946. This penny right here, it's in circulated condition. It's dull, soft to the touch, worn down by decades of life in pockets, purses, and drawers. Nothing flashy, no luster. Just another old Lincoln wheat cent, right? Think again, because the 1946 penny has one of the most owning a coin that was accidentally misprinted by the Royal Australian Mint and then quietly slipped into circulation. It's like a misprinted baseball card, the kind of mistake that skyrockets in value over time. One particularly sharp-eyed collector sold a 1995 50-cent piece with a dramatic double rim error, barely visible to the untrained eye, for a staggering $12,500 at auction. And that's for a circulated coin. Now here's where it gets even crazier. In uncirculated or near uncirculated condition, those rare die error coins can jump to $60,000 or more. That's not a typo. And if the coin shows both the die clash and a planchette flaw, such as uneven metal flow or ghosting on the Queen's profile, you're now in six-figure territory. Some private collectors are quietly paying $120,000 to $150,000 for pristine examples with multiple minting errors from that year. And remember, these coins don't look flashy. They're not shiny. They don't scream, "I'm worth a fortune." Most people would spend one without a second thought. And that's exactly what makes this coin so fascinating. So the next time you come across a 1995 Australian 50-cent piece, take a second look. Check the Queen's profile. Look for rim doubling. Examine the shield closely, because the difference between 50 cents and $50,000 could be hiding in a coin you've already touched. Next up, We've got a coin that didn't just slip through the cracks. It exploded onto the collector's scene with a value that will make your heart race. Stick around, and if you're liking this list so far, tap that subscribe button so you don't miss a single coin. The next one, it's even wilder. Next up, we've got a coin that... Moving on. We're stepping into one of the most thoughtful, overlooked years in coin collecting history, 1965. Now take a look at this one, a simple, circulated 1965 Lincoln Memorial penny. At first glance, nothing special, right? It's got wear, dings, some dirt lodged around the edges. It looks like the kind of coin that's been sitting in a coffee can for decades, forgotten. But here's the part that will, surprised, blow your mind. Some 1965 pennies, even in circulated condition, have sold for over $700,000. Yes, $700,000. For a penny that most people wouldn't even stoop to pick up off the sidewalk. So what makes the 1965 penny such a hidden time bomb? Let's dive into a wild moment in American minting history. In the mid-60s, the U.S. Mint was in a state of dramatic chaos. Silver prices were skyrocketing, coin shortages were spreading. So in 1965, the Mint stopped placing mint marks on all coins to prevent hoarding and confusion. That means your 1965 penny will have no D or S, no matter where it was made. Millions were produced. Over 1.5 billion Lincoln cents rolled out that year. But in the rush, a few very strange things happened. First, the planchette errors. A handful of 1965 Lincoln pennies were accidentally struck on silver dime planchettes. That's right, a penny design printed on a silver blank meant for a dime. These coins weigh less than a regular penny, have a bright silvery hue, and sound different when dropped. One of these shocking errors, found in pocket change, sold for a jaw-dropping $705,000 at auction. Another 1965 might make most people shrug and toss it aside. A 2002 Australian 50-cent piece. Scratched, dull, a little beat up. It's the kind of coin you'd find stuck in the car's cup holder or lost between the couch cushions. But here's the wild part. Even in bad condition, this coin can be worth tens of thousands of dollars if you know what to look for. See, 2002 was a special year. To commemorate the Queen's Golden Jubilee, 50 years on the throne, the Royal Australian Mint released a limited edition commemorative design for the 50-cent coin. This wasn't your average coat of arms. Instead, the coin featured an elegant, stylized portrait of Queen Elizabeth II on the reverse, surrounded by a radiating starburst design. But not all coins were perfect. Some of the Jubilee 50-cent pieces released in 2002 had dramatic strike-through errors, off-center mints, or even metal impurities that caused bubbling and warping during production. And because the coin was already a special issue, with far fewer minted compared to regular years, those flawed coins became instant treasures. One such error coin showing a major die crack across the Queen's face sold for $28,000, and that was heavily circulated. Another one, with an off-metal strike and warping near the edge, fetched over $47,000. It didn't look pretty. In fact, it looked like someone ran it over with a lawnmower. But that's exactly what made collectors fight over it. Here's the shocker. In the right circles, a 2002 Jubilee 50-cent coin in bad condition, but with a known mint error, can fetch over $100,000. That's right, 100 grand for a coin most people wouldn't look at twice. Now imagine if you found one that had never been cleaned or polished, just tucked away and forgotten in a drawer for 2 decades. A raw, honest example with natural wear, but carrying a rare minting flaw? That's the kind of piece that makes seasoned collectors reach for their checkbooks. And if, and this is rare, you find one with a double strike or a coin struck on the wrong planchet, a foreign blank used by mistake, that value pushes towards $300,000. Yes, even in bad condition, because rarity always beats beauty. So don't let a few scratches fool you. If you see that unique starburst design and notice anything odd, misaligned text, double rims, strange metal texture, you could be holding a coin that collectors would pay a small fortune to own. And we're only just getting started. Moving on, let's spine-chilling. We're looking at a 1917 Lincoln wheat penny. But this isn't just any old wheat cent. No, this one has a deep black patina on both sides. Worn, yes, but eerily beautiful, like it's been through fire, or time itself. It almost looks like it was pulled from the wreckage of history. And here's the twist. That dark, almost charcoal black shade, it might not be damage. It might be something far rarer. Something that could turn this coin, in its exact condition, into a $600,000 discovery. Let's step back for a moment. In 1917, the U.S. was in the thick of World War I. The nation was tense. Coins were struck fast and in bulk to meet demand. Over 284 million Lincoln cents were minted that year between Philadelphia, Denver, D, and San Francisco, S. But with high speed came high risk. And that's when the errors slipped in. One of the most coveted varieties of all Lincoln cents is found in this exact year, the 1917 doubled die obverse. This is not a mild error. We're talking extreme, visible doubling in the date, the words "In God We Trust," and "Liberty." You don't need a microscope. You just need to look closely. Now here's where things heat up. The blackened tone of your coin, if it wasn't caused by fire or chemicals, but instead by oxidation of a high-tin bronze planchet, then you may have a coin struck on experimental metal or from a flawed batch of alloy, both of which are known to exist for 1917. Some of these coins darkened over time due to their chemical makeup, not damage. And that odd shade, that spooky black, can make collectors go wild. Why? Because most people mistake it for junk and throw it away. That makes surviving examples nearly impossible to find. One authenticated 1917 double die in dark patinated bronze, even in circulated condition with wear and rim fading, sold for over $87,000. But here's the part that'll stop your heart. A similar coin, also with heavy black toning, also 1917, also with a dramatic obverse doubling, but in slightly better shape, fetched a stunning $606,000 at auction. Yes, over $500,000. For a penny that most people wouldn't even notice. So, how do you tell if your 1917 black penny is the jackpot? Here's what to look for. Obverse, front, doubling. Clear, strong doubling on Liberty or In God We Trust. It should look like a shadow is behind each letter. The number 7 in 1917 often shows heavy doubling or a slight notch at the top. Mint marked check. If there's a D or S, that limits the double die potential, but errors still exist. Philly, no mint mark. Stop. Yes, we're circling back to 1995, but this time with a different twist. You might be thinking, didn't we already cover 1995? Oh, we did, but trust me. This one's nothing like the first. This particular 1995 Australian 50-cent coin in circulated condition looks like the same piece we saw earlier. Same year, same queen, same coat of arms design, but this time the coin isn't famous for a die clash or a ghost strike, no. This one shocked the collector world for a completely different reason. This is the wrong planche mule error. Now, let's break that down. A mule coin happens when two mismatched dies are used together to strike a coin. In this case, a 1995 50-cent reverse. That's the Australian coat of arms. Was accidentally struck on a planchette. The 1930 penny is a ticking time bomb of hidden value. And when the right variety appears, boom! Auction floors erupt. Let's start with the basics. In 1930, America was on the edge. The stock market had just crashed the year before, the Great Depression was tightening its grip, yet the U.S. Mint continued stamping out coins, and in large numbers. Over 157 million pennies were produced that year, spread between Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Seems common, right? Well, here's where the story takes a turn. Most people only see the date. 1930. Old, but not ancient, they say. But the real value of this coin is what's hiding underneath the surface. If you're holding a 1930 penny with a mint mark, a small D for Denver or an S for San Francisco, you might want to sit down. Now, if yours was struck in Denver and has a rare repunched mint mark, yes, that's when the letter D was accidentally stamped twice, slightly offset, you're looking at a wild value spike. These aren't common errors. They're buried deep in circulation, often mistaken as wear or damage. But if spotted by an expert, that coin could be worth up to $380,000 in pristine, uncirculated condition. Let that sink in. 1 penny from 1930, worth more than a 4-bedroom home. Even in circulated condition, like the one we're looking at now, where the colors turned chocolate brown and the details are fading, if that mint error is visible, you could still be staring at a 5-figure payday. Some well-preserved circulated versions with rare features have sold for $10,000 to $40,000. So what should you be checking for? First, the date, 1930. Next, look below it. Do you see a small D or S? That's key. Now take out a magnifying glass. Is the mint mark doubled, crooked, or slightly raised? That's not damage, that's a repunched mint mark. Check for die cracks, off-center strikes, or even lamination errors, which look like peeling surfaces. Each of these quirks turns an average penny into a collector's dream. What makes this so exciting is that 1930 pennies are still relatively easy to find in estate collections, tucked inside old war ration books, or resting at the bottom of mason jars passed down through families. And most people have no idea. Imagine the rush, finding a coin like this, realizing it's not worth 1 cent, but hundreds of thousands. That's not just collecting, that's treasure hunting. So the next time you hear someone say, it's just... All right, now here's where things get really interesting. We're going all the way back to a year when Babe Ruth was still swinging for the back to 1973. And at first glance, this next coin might look like it's barely hanging on. A bad condition, scratched up, worn out 1973 Australian 50-cent piece, faded surfaces, flattened detail, edge nicks. It looks like it's been through decades of use, because it has. But don't let that fool you. Because this coin, in its rough, ragged state, might just be one of the most valuable hidden gems in all of Australian numismatics. And when I tell you what's behind its value, you might start digging through every old change jar you've got. Here's the story. In 1973, the Royal Australian Mint produced a relatively small batch of 50-cent coins. Just under 4.4 million were struck that year. That's already far lower than the typical 20 to 30 million range seen in other years. But what makes 1973 coins so incredibly desirable is a rare but verified striking anomaly that has only appeared on a tiny handful of surviving examples. It's called the split planchet before strike error. In short, this means the metal blank, the planchet, began to split or separate before the coin was ever struck by the dies. The result? A coin with deep, jagged cracks, or sometimes a razor-thin, paper-like flake where part of the design is missing entirely. And here's the kicker. Most of the coins that show this error were used, circulated, damaged. But because of the year and the error type, they're treated like absolute royalty in collector circles. One well-documented specimen, found in terrible condition with major surface wear and edge separation, sold at auction for $46,000. Not because it was beautiful, but because it was one of fewer than 10 known examples with this error on this specific coin from this specific year. Another coin, barely legible from wear, with only partial details visible, shocked everyone when it hit $61,000 after an intense 14-bid auction war. Why? Because the error was clear, and 1973 coins are almost never seen with mint-caused structural defects. But that's not all. Some 1973 coins have also been found with die fill errors, where parts of the queen's portrait or lettering are missing due to grease or debris clogging the die. Others show a rotation error, where the reverse is slightly twisted from the obverse. Even in bad condition, these coins have sold for $18,000 to $29,000, and prices continue to rise as more collectors scramble to complete full-year error sets. And let me be clear, most 1973 coins are ugly. They've been beaten up over 50 years, but that's exactly what makes this so unbelievable, because that dingy, worn-out piece sitting in your coin stash could be worth more than your car, even if it looks like it's barely worth 50 cents. So, next time you spot a 1973 Australian 50-cent coin, stop. Take a second look. Is there a split in the metal? Does one side look misaligned or ghosted? Is something just off? If so, don't toss it, don't clean it, don't even blink. And now, we arrive at 2008. A year most people, century of wear. You're probably thinking, that thing looks like it's been run over by time itself. And you'd be right. But here's where it gets crazy. That same old penny, even in rough shape, might still be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on one detail. Because the 1907 Indian head cent wasn't just the last of its kind. It was part of one of the biggest transitions in U.S. coinage history. And some versions of this coin were struck with such unusual minting quirks, collectors today are fighting over them and paying up to $420,000 at auction. Let's break it down. First, this was the second to last year of the Indian head series, a design that had been around since 1859. That makes the 1907 edition already collectible. But what's fascinating is that so many of these coins were printed, over 108 million, that most people think it's worthless. But not all 1907 Indian cents were created equal. There are whispers and confirmed discoveries of die cracks, repunched dates, and proof errors that were accidentally released into circulation. One such coin, a 1907 proof-like Indian head, found in rough condition but with undeniable sharpness in the fields and devices, sold for nearly $15,000, and that was with visible wear. Now imagine this. One ultra-rare variant was struck with an experimental alloy or an early die state, barely noticeable unless you know what to look for. One such coin, believed to be a test strike for the transition to bronze planchets, sold for over $420,000. And yes, one of them was found in a box of bulk wheat pennies. Misfiled, misjudged, nearly thrown away. So what should you be looking for, even in a bad condition 1907? First, flip it under a light. Does the surface still reflect light like a mirror? You might have a proof or semi-proof strike, rare, even in bad shape. Look at the date. Is the 1907 slightly doubled, tilted, or strange looking? That's a repunched date, and it could easily triple or quadruple the value. Check for die cracks, tiny raised lines that look like scratches but are actually flaws in the mint die. These boost collector demand sky high, and most importantly, weigh it. If it's lighter than usual or has a strange metal hue, it could be one of the experimental strikes. And that's where the real treasure lies. Moving on, we've got a 1937 Lincoln wheat penny. And let's be honest, this one looks rough. Really rough. The surface, dark, blotchy. The edges, almost melted into the background. Lincoln's face, barely a ghost of its former self. If there were a worst condition category in coin collecting, we come to 2001, the year Australia celebrated the centenary of Federation, a major historical milestone, and fittingly, it was marked by a series of commemorative 50-cent coins that highlighted each state and territory. But hidden among them, deep in the batch of New South Wales issue coins, was a mistake so subtle, so rare, and so unbelievable that experts believe less than 10 have ever been found. And yes, even in circulated condition, this one is worth an earth-shaking $367,000. Let's set the stage. In 2001, the Royal Australian Mint released a beautifully designed 50-cent series, one for each state and territory. The New South Wales coin featured the state's coat of arms, a rearing lion above a rising sun, surrounded by a ribbon inscribed with the state's Latin motto. Millions of these coins were produced. Most were unremarkable. Some still circulate today. But something extraordinary happened during one production run. One of the New South Wales commemorative 50-cent coins was accidentally struck using the wrong obverse die, the Queen's head design, meant for a completely different denomination. That's right. A state design on one side and the incorrect Queen's bust on the other. This created what collectors now call the mismatched die mule error, and it's so rare, so bizarre, that only a handful of legitimate examples have ever been authenticated. One of them was found, unbelievably, in circulation in 2009 by a man in Adelaide. He kept it in a drawer for 2 years before realizing what he had. Once confirmed by grading experts, that one battered, circulated 2001 coin with rim scratches, dull surfaces, and faint luster sold at a private auction for $243,000. But the story doesn't stop there. Another 2001 New South Wales coin was discovered with a double strike error layered over the mule, meaning the coin was struck twice, off-center and on mismatched dies. That coin, despite being worn and far from mint condition, was snapped up by an international buyer for an eye-watering $367,000. And here's what's truly mind-blowing. Even if your 2001 New South Wales coin doesn't have the die mismatch, there are other valuable error variants to look for. Some coins were struck with a rotated reverse, meaning when you flip the coin top to bottom, the other side is slightly off axis. Right little penny that most people wouldn't look at twice. It's brown, worn, and over 100 years old. But don't let its dull surface fool you. This is a 1916 Lincoln wheat penny, and what I'm about to tell you will make you see this coin in a whole new light. Now, imagine this. You're digging through an old cigar box that belonged to your grandfather. You find a handful of old coins, dusty, scratched. One of them is a 1916 wheat penny. No shine, just age. You toss it aside. But guess what? That 1-cent coin could be worth over $300,000. Yes, seriously. Here's why. The 1916 Lincoln wheat penny isn't just old. It's a piece of American history. Minted in the thick of World War I, it came out at a time when people were buying Liberty bonds and rationing flour. This penny circulated in a world that looked nothing like ours today. And every scratch, every mark tells a story. But here's the shocker. Not all 1916 pennies are created equal. Most were minted in Philadelphia, over 131 million of them in fact. But if your coin was struck in San Francisco, look closely for a tiny S beneath the date. The value jumps dramatically. And if it has a rare mint error, like a double die or off-center strike, that's where the real money comes in. Even in circulated condition. We're talking average wear, flattened details, loss of shine. This coin can fetch hundreds, even thousands of dollars at auction. But if you've got one in AU or uncirculated condition, buckle up. Clean surfaces, full wheat stalks, and a sharp strike, that's a collector's dream. And if it has one of those rare errors, a pristine example once sold for over $312,000. One penny, 300 grand. Now, you're probably wondering, how do I know if mine is valuable? Here's what to look for. The date, 1916, check. The mint mark, look below the date. If there's an S, jackpot potential. Condition, even if it's been through pockets for decades, it might still carry value. Errors, look for doubling in the date or letters or weird off-center stamps. That's money, serious money. And don't forget, this coin was made from 95% copper, unlike today's coins. It has weight, it has texture, and to collectors, it has soul. So, before you cash in your change jar, pull out every 1916 penny you can find. What looks like just another brown coin could be the best payday of your life. Next up is a penny that looks even more ordinary, but its value absolutely jaw-dropping. Next up, we've got a coin that most people would mistake 50-cent errors ever discovered. And the shocking part? This coin could be sitting in a drawer, old purse, or coin jar right now looking completely ordinary. We're talking about the 1984 Australian 50-cent coin in circulated condition. Scratched, worn, nothing shiny about it. Most folks wouldn't give it a second glance. But if you've got one of these and it has one very specific mistake, you could be looking at a collector's dream worth over $300,000. Let's start with the basics. In 1984, the Royal Australian Mint returned to the classic coat of arms design on the 50-cent piece, following several years of commemorative issues. Over 26 million coins were minted that year, so again, this doesn't sound like anything special. But hidden among those millions was a legendary error that would later send shockwaves through the numismatic world. It's called the double obverse error, a stunning minting mistake where both sides of the coin feature the Queen's head. That's right, no coat of arms at all. Somehow, during the production run, a coin was struck between two obverse dies, one for each side, creating a mirror image of Queen Elizabeth II back to back. It's one of the rarest types of minting errors in existence, and only happened to a tiny handful of coins. One of these was discovered in loose change by a man in New South Wales in the early 2000s. He thought it was a novelty item until it was authenticated by experts and put up for auction. The final price? A mind-melting $210,000. And that was for a circulated coin with visible surface wear. Another collector who'd been combing through rolls of 50-cent pieces for years found a second example. Same year, same error, but in slightly better condition. That one sold privately for just under $290,000, with estimates saying if it were uncirculated, it could have fetched close to $500,000. Let that sink in. A coin from 1984 that looks like every other 50-cent piece, but with a freak minting error, worth more than a Lamborghini. And here's what makes it even more exciting. Because this error is so rare, most collectors have never even seen one in person. That means there could still be undiscovered examples out there. In coin jars, in antique stores, in grandma's old kitchen drawer. Even regular 1984 50-cent coins with smaller errors, like off-center strikes, broad strikes, or clipped planchets, have fetched between $8,000 and $25,000, even in circulated condition. And if the coin is in slightly better shape, with full visible detail despite its age, those prices only go up. So here's your mission. If you see a 1984 50-cent piece with the Queen's head on both sides, don't spend it. Don't clean it. Don't touch it more than you have to, because you might just be holding one of the most valuable minting mistakes. Next, shocking backstories in coin collecting, and a handful of rare survivors from this very year have been sold for nearly $900,000. Yes. You heard that right. This dusty little coin has touched the edge of $1 million. Let's rewind the clock. It's 1946. World War II has just ended. America is rebuilding, and the U.S. Mint is shifting production back to peacetime standards. In 1943, pennies were made from steel coated in zinc, the famous Steelies. In 1944, they switched back to using copper. But with millions of leftover planchets and metal blanks scattered across mint facilities, mistakes were bound to happen. And 1946? That's when the chaos hit. The first big shocker, a 1946 D penny struck on a 1943 steel planchet. It looks like a silvery dime, shiny, magnetic, and completely out of place for the year. This error was so rare that for decades, collectors believed it didn't exist. But one surfaced. Then another. In 2021, one of these Steel Strike 1946 D pennies sold for $912,000. From 1 cent to nearly $1 million. Another legendary anomaly? The 1946 S over D mint mark error. Some pennies minted in San Francisco accidentally used dies that had a Denver D mint mark that was later punched over with an S. Look closely under the date, and you might see the faint ghost of a D hiding beneath the S. Even in circulated shape, these varieties have sold for over $45,000 because so few exist, and they're incredibly hard to spot. But it doesn't stop there. 1946 was also a hotbed year for foreign planchet errors. A few Lincoln cents were struck on leftover blanks meant for Belgian 2 franc pieces or Peruvian coins, thinner, off-color, and usually lighter in weight. These errors were often discarded, melted, or simply overlooked as damaged. But if you've got a 1946 penny that looks too thin, weighs under 3 grams, or has a strange silvery or pale bronzedom color, you might be holding one of these accidental strikes. One of these coins, authenticated with full detail still visible despite circulation, sold for $138,000. Let that sink in. Even beat-up 1946 pennies, if struck on the wrong metal or with a rare minting mistake, can now buy you a house. Here's what you should inspect. Check the date, 1946 only. Look for odd colors, steel gray, nickel tone, or anything that isn't that deep brown copper. Weigh the coin. It should be about 3.11 grams. If it's around for pocket change from a grandparent's old coat, the 1938 Lincoln wheat penny, in circulated condition. Now, at first glance, it doesn't scream value. It's got a soft, worn copper look. The wheat stalks on the back, faded. The edges, smoothed by decades of use. You might think, well, it's just another old penny. But don't blink, because this coin has shocked collectors with auction prices soaring past $350,000 under the right conditions. So let me tell you why this coin, minted during the heart of the Great Depression, has become a 6-figure mystery. 1938 was a year when the nation was still struggling to recover. Jobs were scarce, money was tight, so pennies, they mattered. People didn't throw them away. They used them until they were worn smooth, which is exactly what makes a high-grade 1938 penny so rare today. Most 1938 pennies were minted in Philadelphia and Denver, and the numbers? Massive. Over 250 million minted across both cities. But here's the twist. Most of those coins have not survived in good condition. You'll find plenty in coin jars, flea markets, or dusty attic collections, but almost all of them are heavily circulated. Now here's where it gets shocking. If you somehow have a 1938 D Denver penny with a double die reverse, a rare minting mistake where the design on the back is doubled ever so slightly, collectors will open their wallets in a heartbeat. We're talking tens of thousands for average errors, and if the coin is in near mint or red uncirculated condition, one of those coins sold for over $356,000 at a major auction. And the best part? These high-value error coins don't always look flashy, even in circulated condition. If the doubling is visible, or there's a misstrike, or even a die crack, collectors will pay a premium, sometimes 5 to 6 figures, just for the right flaw. Here's what you need to watch for. The date, 1938. The mint mark, especially a D beneath the date. Look closely at the back, the words 1 cent and United States of America. If they look shadowed or slightly doubled, you might be holding a gold mine. Off-center strikes or clipped planchets, even more valuable. Even in circulated condition, if there's a noticeable error, this humble penny can explode in value. It's like finding a crack in a baseball card that turns out to be from a legendary print run. Mistakes equal money. So before you hand over a handful of old coins at a garage sale, take a flashlight and a magnifying glass to every 1938 wheat penny. That dented little coin might just be worth more than a brand new Mercedes. And by the way, if this surprises you even half as much as it surprises most collectors, take 1 second right now and subscribe, because the next coin is a complete curveball. You won't believe what 1 tiny cent from 1922 is hiding. Moving on. We've got a penny from the roaring tail end of the 1920s, a 1930 Lincoln wheat penny, circulated, worn, and barely noticed by most. But oh, you're going to want to look again. This coin might seem like just another copper disc from your grandparents' change jar, a little dull, scratched, the wheat stalks in the back barely visible, but in the world of coin collectors, meant for a totally different denomination. Smaller, lighter, foreign even. The coin was physically the wrong size, but had the correct design. And it gets crazier. This error wasn't discovered until years later, when a collector in Melbourne noticed something odd about the sound the coin made when dropped. It was higher pitched, more like a 10-cent piece. Upon closer inspection, it turned out the coin was struck on a cupro-nickel blank meant for another coin, possibly even a New Zealand issue, and weighed far less than the standard 15.55 grams. This small, circulated, dinged-up 1995 50-cent piece, it turned out to be a 1-in-a-million mule error. And once word got out, the bidding war was immediate and intense. The final hammer price? $184,000. Yes, for a circulated scratched coin with rim wear and surface nicks. Why? Because it was a verified minting anomaly. A Frankenstein coin that should never have existed. Some experts believe it may have been struck during a tooling transition error when the mint was adjusting dies between production runs and mixed up planchettes from different coin lines. Even more shocking, other mule errors from 1995 have surfaced since. A total of 4 are confirmed, all different in slight ways. One struck on an underweight aluminum bronze blank sold in 2023 for $217,000, with the buyer calling it a modern-day holy grail. Now, imagine finding one in pocket change, worn, dirty, unnoticed, and suddenly realizing it's worth more than a Ferrari. Even basic error coins from 1995, like partial collar strikes, off-center hits, or weak reverse impressions, regularly sell for $5,000 to $12,000, depending on the severity. And if it's a known mule or planchet error, the price can leap to 6 figures, even in the most circulated condition. So yes, 1995 is back, and this time, it's even more outrageous than before. Keep your eyes open, folks, because the tiniest difference, the weight, the metal, the sound, could mean you're holding a coin worth more than your retirement fund. Moving on, we're dialing the clock way fences, and silent films ruled the theaters. 1927, and in your hand, you might be holding a coin from that very year. A 1927 Lincoln wheat penny, in bad condition, worn, scratched, no shine. You can barely see Lincoln's face, and the wheat stalks? Almost gone. Most folks would toss it aside without a second thought. But what if I told you that ugly beat-up penny could still be worth up to $400,000? Now, I know that sounds unbelievable, but let me walk you through the mystery of the 1927 penny and why, even in bad condition, the right version of this coin can be a life-changing discovery. Here's the story. In 1927, the U.S. Mint pumped out hundreds of millions of these 1-cent coins, over 144 million from Philadelphia alone, with additional mintings in Denver and San Francisco. So yes, technically it's a common year. But there's nothing common about what's happened with certain rare 1927 varieties. Collectors started noticing oddities, off-center strikes, filled mint marks, and even ghost dates where the numbers were weakly struck. Then came the real prize, the 1927D double die obverse. This rare variety shows distinct doubling in the date and lettering, especially in God We Trust and Liberty. It's almost invisible to the naked eye, but under magnification, boom, instant collector alert. And here's the kicker. Even heavily circulated versions with this doubling have sold for over $20,000 to $50,000 just because the error is so rare. But if somehow, just somehow, one of those rare 1927D double dies turns up in uncirculated red condition, hold on tight, because a known specimen sold at auction for over $403,000. That's right, 1 penny. Bad year in history, worst-looking coin, but the minting mistake turned it into solid gold for collectors. So if you're staring at a raggedy 1927 penny right now, even if it looks like it's been through 10 wars and a washing machine, look closer. Here's what to check. Date? 1927. Mint mark. Look for a D or S under the date. D is especially valuable with the error. Is the date or lettering slightly doubled or blurry looking? That's your jackpot clue. Check the edges. If it's off-center or clipped, you might have an additional error bonus. And remember, condition does matter, but rarity beats beauty in the coin world. A beat-up penny with a rare error will outshine a perfect one with none, every single time. This is why coin collectors go nuts over wheat pennies. You're not just collecting cents, you're chasing mysteries, mint mistakes, and million-dollar moments. So don't be too quick to throw away the ugly coins. They might just be the ones that change your life. Coming up next up, we're stepping way back, all the way to 1907, a time when Teddy Roosevelt was in the White House, the Ford Model T didn't exist yet, and most people still lit their homes with gas lamps. And here in front of us is a 1907 Indian head penny in bad condition. Faded, dark, beaten down by more than a would scroll right past without a second thought. But what if I told you the 2008 Australian 50-cent coin hides a secret so rare, so unexpected, that collectors have called it the modern ghost? And here's the wild part. In circulated condition, it looks almost completely normal. Just another dull coin with a standard coat of arms. No commemorative design, no flashy feature. But if you know what to look for, this humble coin can unlock a jaw-dropping $325,000 payday. Let's rewind for a moment. In 2008, the Royal Australian Mint produced over 22 million 50-cent coins. That's a huge number. They were standard issues. Queen Elizabeth II on the obverse, the traditional Australian coat of arms on the reverse. Nothing special, right? Wrong. Because a handful, a microscopic fraction of those coins were struck with an error so subtle, even trained eyes miss it the first time. It's known as the micro-date mule error. What does that mean? Well, in this case, the wrong date punch was used for a short period. A smaller than normal font, out of alignment, and barely noticeable unless you're really looking. The 2008 on these coins appears slightly recessed and disproportionately tiny compared to standard issues. But here's where it gets shocking. Not only was the wrong date stamp used, but some of these coins were also struck on misaligned or undersized blanks meant for foreign contract coins produced by the Australian Mint. That makes them double errors or even triple errors depending on the strike quality. And yes, even in circulated condition, these coins are being hunted down with laser focus. In 2022, a heavily circulated 2008 50-cent coin with a confirmed microdate and off-metal planchet error was sold privately for $187,000. The buyer? A European collector who had been looking for that exact variant for over a decade. Later that same year, another was authenticated, this time with a partial collar strike, causing a dramatic railroad rim effect. Despite deep wear and surface dullness, it sold at auction for an eye-popping $221,000. And just recently, and this one stunned the numismatic world, an example believed to be the only fully preserved microdate strike with a visible die rotation was valued by an Australian dealer at over $325,000, and the coin wasn't even in mint state. It had visible scratches and pocket wear, just enough to make it blend in with the rest of your loose change. That's the terrifying part. You could be holding one right now and not even know it. Even more minor 2008 errors like filled dies, rotated reverse sides, and small font mismatches have been selling for $5,000 to $14,000. And finally, this little guy might just win. But guess what? This very bad condition 1937 penny could still hold a massive secret, one that stunned collectors. Because certain 1937 pennies, even in terrible shape, have sold for up to $450,000, all because of one minting disaster that turned an ordinary coin into a legend. Let's peel back the mystery. By 1937, the Great Depression was still weighing heavy on America. Pennies were used, and used hard. They passed through thousands of hands, worn, scratched, forgotten. And with more than 300 million pennies minted that year across Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, most people figured there's nothing special about 1937. That assumption could cost someone a fortune. Because in 1937, a few major mint errors slipped through. One of the most shocking, the 1937 no mint mark double die obverse. A handful of pennies from Philadelphia came out with dramatic doubling on the words "In God We Trust" and "Liberty." At first glance, it looks like a blur, but get it under a magnifying glass and you'll see every letter, printed twice. And here's where it gets insane. One of those double die coins, found in terrible condition, still sold for over $40,000. Why? Because rarity trumps condition. Every single time. But it gets even better. There's also a 1937 D penny with a repunched mint mark. That little D under the date, some were stamped twice, slightly off-center. They're easy to miss in bad condition. They just look like a smudge or dent. But to a trained collector's eye, that tiny flaw can turn your penny into a $15,000 treasure. And then there's the true unicorn, the 1937 off-metal strike. A few coins were mistakenly struck on foreign planchets, thinner, silver-colored blanks intended for overseas coins. They somehow got mixed into the U.S. Mint's supply and were used to strike a few Lincoln cents. One of these freak coins, confirmed authentic, sold at auction for over $452,000. Imagine that. A penny, smaller, lighter, beat to pieces, and worth nearly $500,000. So don't let condition fool you. Here's what you should be hunting for. Date, 1937. Look closely for doubling on "Liberty" or "In God We Trust." If the letters look fuzzy or shadowed, that's a red flag for value. Check under the date for a D mint mark. If it looks weird, crooked, or doubled, you might have a repunched mint mark. Use a scale. If your penny weighs less than 3.11 grams or feels off, you could have a wrong planchet error, and that's where prices skyrocket. Even the ugliest coin can. Next up, a penny that most people wouldn't even blink at. 1963, circulated condition, looks exactly like the ones we've all seen 1,000 times. It's got that dull copper tone, a little green around the edges, maybe a scratch or two across Lincoln's face. Nothing fancy, nothing rare, right? Wrong. This common-looking 1963 Lincoln Memorial cent could be hiding a jaw-dropping secret, one that's shocked even seasoned coin dealers. Because under the right conditions, this exact coin, yes, even in circulated shape, has sold for over $500,000. Let that sink in for a second. 1 penny from 1963, $500,000. So how is that even possible? Let's start with the basics. In 1963, the U.S. Mint was running full steam. Over 2.4 billion pennies were produced, more than 750 million from Philadelphia alone. The Lincoln Memorial looks like every other one in your change jar might secretly be worth more than most people's homes. And here's the kicker. Because the 2005 coin doesn't have a flashy commemorative design, most people ignore it. That's what makes it so dangerous and so exciting. You could walk right past a six-figure treasure and never know it. So here's what you do. The next time you find a 2005 Australian 50-cent coin, look closely. Is the queen's head slightly shifted? Do the rim edges look thick? Next up, we go back to 1984, a year that might not stand out to most people, but in the world of coin collecting, it marks the birth of one of the rarest. Memorial reverse design was in its early years, replacing the wheat ears in 1959. Everything seemed routine, but this year something slipped through the cracks. Multiple things, actually. The most famous, the 1963 D Lincoln cent, struck on a bronze planchet intended for foreign coins. These errors are extremely rare, and they look just slightly off from normal. They're often thinner, lighter, or have a strange color tone, and they blend right in with everyday pocket change. Now, here's the wild part. One of these 1963 D off-metal errors was found in circulated condition, scratches, fingerprints, rim damage, and all, and it's still sold at auction for $504,000. And that's not the only anomaly. Another type of error that turns this coin into solid gold is the double die obverse, where the date, lettering, and Lincoln's profile show strong, visible doubling. These errors weren't discovered until decades later because the doubling is subtle and easily dismissed in circulated coins. But when collectors finally realized what they were looking at, boom, market value exploded. If you find a 1963 penny with doubling on Liberty or In God We Trust, even if it's scuffed up, it could still fetch $10,000 to $30,000 from collectors hungry for these hidden rarities. And let's not forget the floating roof error, where the top of the Lincoln Memorial looks like it's missing the connecting lines. These errors were caused by worn-out dies, and while some are minor, others are dramatic, and the best examples in decent condition have sold for upwards of $15,000. Even the small date versus large date variants, though subtle, have created collector battles, with specific die pairings fetching thousands when authenticated. So, here's what you need to look for. Date, 1963. Mint mark D for Denver or no mark for Philadelphia. Denver has more known high-value errors. Check for strange coloring, unusual weight, use a gram scale. Normal is 3.11 grams, or thinner metal, all signs of a wrong planchet. Inspect the lettering and Lincoln's bust closely for doubling. Flip it over and look at the Lincoln Memorial. Is the roof floating? Next up, hold your breath, because this one is absolutely... Let's talk about a coin that seems totally ordinary, but hides one of the biggest payout surprises on this entire list. We're looking at the 2005 Australian 50-cent coin in circulated condition. It's a coin you've probably seen a dozen times without ever thinking twice. But what if I told you this seemingly everyday piece could be worth a life-changing amount of money? Now, the 2005 50-cent coin is known for a couple of things. First, it wasn't a special commemorative issue. It featured the standard coat of arms design, just like many other years. In fact, over 20 million were minted. So again, it doesn't sound rare until you learn about what happened behind the scenes at the Royal Australian Mint that year. That's where things get really interesting. In 2005, a small batch of 50-cent coins was accidentally struck using a misaligned obverse die. What does that mean? It means the Queen's portrait, which appears on the head side, was slightly tilted and off-center, causing visible rim distortion. And in even rarer cases, the reverse design, the Australian coat of arms, was also misaligned, resulting in what's known as a double die clash error. These are incredibly difficult to find. They were never meant to exist. One of these rare die clash 2005 50-cent pieces was recently sold in circulated condition. We're talking pocket change, scratches, and all, for a jaw-dropping $36,000. And the collector who bought it? He called it the Ghost Strike, because the Queen's profile looked like it was haunted, a shadowed double image, chilling and clear as day. And it doesn't stop there. Some coins from this year were found to be struck on the wrong planchet, meaning they were accidentally minted using blanks meant for foreign coins. These are called off-metal errors, and they are super rare. In fact, one 2005 50-cent piece struck on a thinner blank and weighing under standard was authenticated and valued at over $85,000. And yes, that was circulated with edge wear and surface dings. Now, in the rarest scenarios, and these are the true unicorns, if a 2005 error coin has both an off-metal strike and a dramatic double die clash, you're talking collector bids upwards of $250,000. One such coin, described by a private buyer as the only known example of its kind, was allegedly purchased off-market for nearly $300,000. Think about that. A coin that